This is Breaking Down Security, and I am Brian Brake. Welcome back, listener. This is Breaking Down Security. I am Brian, and Ms. Berlin is with me today.
Hi.
Oh, well done you. We're over here. This is a podcast right here. We're talking.
I have 3 screens, and I misplaced my screen.
You missed.
Sorry.
Oh, okay. Well,
I have too many desktops open.
You're elite hack source. You've got to have multiple monitors, I guess. So
yeah. Like I can't handle just one anymore.
I have 2 24-inch 4K monitors, but then I have a lot of real estate, and it hurts my neck to move. So
mine are 28-inch, but they're not 4K.
Nice. So how are you doing? You having fun at Derbycon?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I loved that one talk with that guy who did the thing. Yeah, it was great. Yeah. So you're
Except
actually.
I don't really ever go to talk, so I'm there. So.
Oh yeah. Well, there was that one funny thing that happened that
Right.
Yeah,
right.
I loved that. Yeah, that's unforgettable. So yeah, we're just making generic comments because we're actually at Derbycon this week. There'll be some Derbycon audio forthcoming in the next week or 2, depending on how much audio we did get. We'll definitely have our podcast with podcasters on next week or the week after.
I've had people ask about that today. By the way,
I know.
They want to know when and where it's going to be.
Is that fellow podcasters or fans who are trying to crash the
podcasters?
Oh, okay,
yeah.
Good. Okay, all right.
Yeah,
yes,
because they haven't gotten any official info yet, and they're worried that it's not going to happen.
Oh,
it'll happen.
It's Bill, isn't it?
No, Tim.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we'll probably do it Saturday night or something. So, probably early. That way people can still go to dual core and all that stuff. So it's not my bag, but other people like it. So, anyway. So I want to get started. Mr. Betcher's not going to be here. He's got a thing. As a matter of fact, his text said there's too much going on right now. Sorry, dude. And I was like, all right, fine.
Oh.
I don't know if it was a change window or something happened at work or, family thing. So, hope he's doing okay. I will see him on Tuesday.
At least he's not napping.
Yeah. Yeah. We caught him napping before a podcast. Yeah. He forgot about. So, so many people in the industry believe that there is a shortage or a lack of talent in the information security realm, and that there are so many jobs and not enough people to fill them. And I don't editorialize much on this show, but I think that is probably bullshit. And I think that we're going to talk about a lot of the systemic issues that we've got on this show, and to do so, we've kind of brought what we consider to be the enemy of the state in many cases here. He's known as a talent acquisition specialist, or to the layman, he's a recruiter. He's based out of Seattle here, and his name is Preston Pierce. So welcome, Preston, to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here, even though I'm representing the evil empire.
That's right. No, I'm just kidding. I've known Preston for, I don't know, about 6 months on LinkedIn and stuff, but I've known his father, Tab, who runs Caliber Security up here for, probably about 3 years. About right after I got here, he was running one of the premier job boards in Seattle. So if there was a job that needed to be done, InfoSec or security related or developer related, he had that board. He was actually the first guy who was like, hey, you should talk to him. He's got a job board that's fantastic. So I reached out to Tab, and he took time out of his very busy schedule to have breakfast with me on several occasions. And, I had lunch with him and Preston just a couple of weeks ago, and I thought it would be a great idea to have Preston on to discuss hiring practices, how recruiters actually hire, what companies may not be doing to get proper people, and how we can make that better. So, Preston, maybe you could talk a little bit about yourself and how you got into this. I mean, other than with your father, but I mean, how you started your organization.
Yeah, absolutely. So. My company is 3PNT Security Recruiting. We started up about 2.5 years ago now. And actually, I did get my start doing recruiting within security with my father's company, Caliber Security Partners, prior to opening this business up. So I've been at it for a while. We've got a team of security recruiters, couple that aren't in the Seattle area, but we're all up here. But yeah, we love it. Security industry is great. We try and not be a part of the evil empire and be the, I suppose, antithesis of what most people would consider the spammy recruiter. So hopefully I can represent well today.
Cool.
I think a lot of the recruiters that we give the bad rap to aren't strictly security recruiters.
Yeah, exactly.
They have absolutely no idea what the industry is like, or probably any of the other industries that they recruit for.
Yeah, I mean, I know several recruiters. Preston, of course, Dan Leiter over at dang it, I forgot what company he works for. But he's a decent enough recruiter. He's actually come out to CSEC East a couple times. He seems to genuinely care about what's going on in InfoSec and staying abreast of those things. And those are the kinds of recruiters that I enjoy talking to. It's the other ones that just email me out of the blue asking me if I want to move to South Dakota for 3 months for a help desk job, which bothers me that they're just spammy kind of people, which kind of. Those are the only ones we hear about. We never hear about the ones where the guy was out of work for 6 months and found a job that actually works for him, and he gets there. So there, I found this before we had Preston on. There was an article I saw on Slashdot talking about U.S. employers struggling to match workers with open jobs. And the synopsis of the story was matching unemployed with the right job is difficult. There are some things employers can do to improve the odds. So there's a chief economist for the site Glassdoor, which is something we can also talk about. He said, U.S. employers often complain workers don't have the skills for the jobs available. That's true for upper-level healthcare and technology. For the most part, it doesn't look like there's a skills gap. The main reason is there's too many job openings. That unemployment is so low and the U.S. labor force is growing slowly, there's no doubt it's hard for companies to find workers. But if that were the main problem, you'd see wages rising more rapidly in the economy, and that's not the case. So, Preston, when you are talking to companies, and it's not just, I assume it's not just companies in Seattle, you're recruiting for all over the country?
Right, that's correct.
Okay. Do you see that are some companies just starving for jobs? Is it based on locality, or do you ever look at the job positions and go, yeah, you're not paying what market value is? And I guess what is market value for certain areas is different in some parts of the country. So, I mean, could you tell us some of the things that you're seeing when you're recruiting for some of these jobs?
Absolutely. Yeah, you hit on a few core areas that I think are the reason we oftentimes get called in to do work in the first place, because there will be a job posting that's open for 100 or 200 days and they'll have almost no hits on it, which is pretty mind-blowing because people want jobs. And oftentimes the areas of work are interesting enough. But yeah, sometimes it's in a terrible geographic location. Sometimes it's for an area that shouldn't require somebody to be in the office, but they want them to be. And oftentimes it really does come down to pay. Oftentimes they think that they can get by with paying peanuts and still get somebody great somehow, and it's just never the case. And so it can really be any number of things, but I would say in the end, probably the biggest factor in jobs going unfilled is the price. I think too often management teams just, whether they're on a low budget or what have you, the price is just not there, and you can't hire somebody if you're not willing to pay the market value at least.
Mm-hmm. So, okay. So I know that like places on the West Coast, like in San Francisco, if you're not getting paid at least $180, you're going to be living in a cardboard box on the side of the road. Whereas $180 in some place like, Missouri.
And $180 here would be amazing.
I know, right?
Like,
so okay.
My cost of living is so low. $180, I could live in any house in my town. Yeah.
So we talk about that. The first thing that people ask is, one, where's it located, and two, is it remote? Why is it that the culture these days of many companies, why do they believe that you have to have an ass in a seat?
Great question.
Is it a management thing? Is it a management style? Or is it just they don't have the technology in place to do it securely? Or they just really want to see people? They want to be able to walk down the hallway and say, hey, Bob.
I think it's all of it, honestly, but I'd say the biggest factor from my perspective is management. I think it really boils down to an ability to manage people, and not just manage them, but feel competent and comfortable in managing people remotely. It's a certain level of trust associated with the employees and with the team that oftentimes I don't know that management is super capable of fostering. And I'd say that's where it breaks down the most is, sometimes there isn't the technology in place, but for the most part, it is there, and there can be a way to do it. It's just that they feel productivity is going to be raised, collaboration will be enhanced and bettered if people are in close quarters, which may or may not be the case depending on the position. But I also think for the most part, it comes from even higher up beyond a security team, certain company policies or procedures that they want to roll out, that they're pulling back on remote workers, and they just don't realize that for certain areas of work, like maybe a pen tester, it doesn't really matter that they're in the office, and It might be extremely convenient not to be there during business hours.
Right. Yeah. I think we saw some tweets on this whenever the hurricanes were going on, and people were saying, hey, companies that don't allow remote work, look at what happens when you put all your eggs in one basket. Now you've got, those kinds of not allowing remote work or, those things, it will impact the environment if you're not geographically dispersed. My company is geographically dispersed. My boss is in Miami. My teammates are in DC, Minneapolis, and Sunnyvale, California. So if one of us gets sick, we're not going to bring the rest of the team down with our flu. Or if there's an earthquake in Northern California, the other three people, we're concerned about our teammate, but job can still go on, So these companies that want remote work, I find interesting. It's like companies you wouldn't think, like Yahoo, before their implosion, they asked everybody to start coming back to work. I just saw, I think IBM started asking people to start coming back to work, and I
think you miss out on a lot of good talent by not allowing remote work as well.
Yeah.
Like not a lot of people, not everybody can just pick up and move.
That's true.
And if you're willing to pay them what they want, but you're not going to let them work from home, you may miss out on a really good candidate.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, and I get, when I worked with Mr. Betcher at the payment card processing company, I was one of those people where I could not be at home. I had to be in the office. I craved the human interaction. I'm not exactly sure how that got flipped, but now I can't not think about being in the office. I don't want to be in the office if I can keep from it, because I don't miss the commute. I don't miss the interaction with people, because there's so many ways of interacting. We have chat, we have TeamSpeak, we can get on Zooms, we can talk to people. I've got chat all over the place. So how would a company that has historically had an ass in a seat move away from that and allow people to work remotely? Because obviously that hurts their recruiting process, especially if they're a highly technical person and you're looking for those people.
Yeah, I mean, to second Amanda's comment, I absolutely agree that it's detrimental to hiring if you're not going to be willing to allow remote work. I don't think there's been a single instance that I can remember off the top of my head where I've said, I think this person is one of the best I know in application security or what have you, certain area, and they don't work remotely. Every single one of them does that I know. So really you're cutting off the top end of your talent if you're not going to allow that. But to your question, I again think it's going to go back to management. I think it's going to crumble if management isn't prepared for a team to go remote. I think we've all had managers who micromanage or who mismanage. And I think that's probably inevitable if somebody isn't used to working with a remote team or isn't comfortable with that idea. And probably if there aren't active measures being taken to ensure productivity and to ensure collaboration. If there aren't any tools being used, then obviously that's going to be an issue. We do need those areas where we can have our chats or our Slacks or our Zooms or whatever. And if that's not in place, I think it will crumble.
Right. So when a company asks you to come in and they're like, hey, we've tried hiring people, but we're not very good at it, or we're not happy with what we're getting in the job pool, how often do they actually listen to the recommendations that you make? And what kind of recommendations do you make for companies when you come in? Do you ever look at their company and go, okay, look, you guys are going to have to do X, Y, and Z, or do you ever make recommendations and do they actually follow them?
Yeah, that's a great question, and probably one of my favorites, because it's half and half. Half the companies, well, it's not half and half on wanting to make recommendations. That's almost always, actually. But as far as companies being willing to take the advice, that's not as common as it should be, and not as frequent as I would like. And really, we do have a unique perspective being security recruiters, where we're constantly surveying the market. We're constantly seeing the movement that happens, what people's interests are, and we're talking to people all day. And it is a little bit ironic that teams who have struggled to hire the talent won't take advice on hiring the talent from people who hire the talent.
Right.
But yeah, it's very frequent. Recommendations stemming from rewriting a job description to pay, switching up how much they're paying, or certain other benefits like remote work. I've worked with some great companies who do take those to heart. I worked with a pretty, probably a mid or large size organization, and they were great. They were willing to, they're a security firm. They were willing to get, I believe it was the vice president of the company on the phone to talk with us about what we were seeing and to implement some changes. And that was impressive. I thought that was a great move, because they were willing to recognize that they didn't see everything and that they needed to be willing to learn. And as a result, their hiring improved a lot.
Nice.
And I think that's a model that should be adopted much more frequently.
Yep. So let's. I want to go back there. You were talking about job descriptions. So when they send you a job description, is there a specific format you like to see when you're doing those? Do you ask for what the pay rate is, or do they give you one? And how do you tell them that either yes, this is good, or you're not going to find somebody for this money, or how do you do that?
Yeah, so typically we will get a job description and a pay range sent to us immediately. That's oftentimes the first thing that we'll get sent is some sort of message, or get a phone call and say, we have this need in this area, this type of person, these requirements. Or if it's an email, they'll just say, hey, can you help us out with this, in a job description, and oftentimes a pay range. And if they're on the phone, there have been times when immediately, just knowing the market, I've just told them flat out that's not going to work, and that is the sole reason that you're not going to hire anybody, and us being brought on isn't going to change anything. But as far as a format goes for a job description, I would say being as concise as possible, but not leaving out the important information is really just what I prefer. I don't think I have anything too particular on preferences, but I've been sent a job description once or twice. It's like 3 or 4 pages long. And it's just like, why? What is this? This shouldn't be a pamphlet or like a research article. It's pretty simple. And the funny thing is, typically those jobs are actually the lower end of the tier on security positions too. So it's I don't know how that works, but yeah, I think keeping it short is short and sweet is really where it's at.
Yeah. So what's the process like for when they come in? Is it because they can't find people, or they just think that you can do a better job of finding that talent?
Yeah, it can be any number of reasons why we would be brought on. I would say it usually breaks down into a few reasons. One is exactly like you're saying, they simply don't have the knowledge or the experience in the security industry to go out and find their people. And oftentimes that won't be within security firms. Usually that'll be a company that has a security team, but they're putting their regular human resources, talent acquisition people on it, and they just don't really get it. They don't know what they're reading or seeing. So that's one reason. Another is that it's just a simple capacity issue. Sometimes there really aren't enough people in the HR department, especially if an organization is growing rather quickly. And that's been the instance a few times. And kind of along that line of thought, we've actually had a lot more work recently on venture-backed startups within the security space. And in that instance, they don't have recruiters internally. And so that's when they turn to us as well.
Okay. Do you ever give training to the recruiters inside the company on how to do better recruiting?
We've done it a bit. It's usually been pretty informal. But yeah, we have done some trying to help educate them on ways to go about learning more about the industry, kind of conducting your own research, looking at the tools that are available. And so we've done it a little bit. I'd like to do it a bit more. But frankly, one of the issues that I think that arises within this communication and recruiting process with dealing with human resources is that they've got a lot on their plate, like everybody, and oftentimes they just don't care to take the time to do it. And so sometimes it just falls on deaf ears, I would say, and kind of the same issue with trying to get to management with, sometimes we'll try and make those recommendations, but we hit HR before we can hit a manager, and they're kind of set there to be a wall between us, even though obviously it's going to work a lot better if we get to work together. Yeah. But yeah, that happens pretty frequently.
So I know Miss Amanda knows about this a lot, but is that why networking outside of recruiters is so helpful, because it helps us get around that HR block?
Are you asking me that question? Or?
Yeah. Well, I mean, Miss Amanda networks quite effectively, and I've told people before, and I've had to learn the hard way, that you don't.
My last 2 jobs, I've not had to actually apply for a position in a long time.
That's nice.
Yeah.
That's
Just using
really
Twitter
nice.
is helpful.
Great. Yeah. So I mean, I tell people to you don't network when you have to, because it comes off as sounding desperate. When I was laid off from my job unexpectedly, I hit up the local ISSA and I was like, hey, I'm Brian. I'm looking for a job. That's what it sounded like, at least in hindsight to me. And people don't take kindly to you just, coming up and asking them if they have jobs available.
I'm looking for people all the time, like not for my company necessarily, but like people are like, hey, keep an eye out on something for me or whatever. And I don't know, they should just be contacting a recruiter instead.
Sure.
Okay. If I could speak to it, I mean, from a recruiter's perspective, as probably surprising as it sounds, I actually think I would agree completely. I think that it makes a lot more sense. If I were putting myself in the shoes of a security professional, I would definitely go to a hiring manager before I go to a recruiter. And it's simply because of human resources. And I'm glad that the audience for this podcast is probably not human resource generalists, because they might get upset at me. But seriously, that's the issue we face most of the time, is that we need access to the hiring manager, and it's no different for somebody applying for a job. Somebody in the HR department who doesn't know security can be the difference between a hiring manager seeing your resume or not, which is just ridiculous. Yep. So a hiring manager, if you have direct access to them, they're going to understand what they're seeing. They might be able to actually have some real interaction with you in person. I think the likelihood is just so much higher that you're going to get landed in a job.
Nice.
Yeah, I was talking to a friend of mine about that yesterday, that the bigger hurdles to get past HR and to somebody that actually knows what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And wording, or whatever however you format your resume, or maybe whoever you talk to is really gonna matter from one company to the next.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, if you can get a hold of the people who actually work there, not necessarily the hiring manager, but if you can get a hold of somebody who'll be like, I'll give the resume to my boss. That's always helpful. If you can get those, the people who are, I don't want to call them the LinkedIn open networkers, but if you can get somebody who's a helper who wants, to make their company better, and they think that you can help them do that, then, you've pretty much got it made. So,
yeah.
Right.
All right. So you said you only deal with HR. Do you ever deal with the hiring managers at all?
We do. I just wish it was more. It's kind of it's a sore spot, and that's probably why I brought it up so much. We do, yeah. It's probably Well, what I'll say is in any engagement, we do interact with the hiring manager to some extent. Usually in the process, we'll have a pretty detailed, lengthy phone conversation or multiple conversations to where I get to ask them pretty pointed questions on what the real needs are beyond a job description, what the requirements are, what's preferred within a job description, and what's fluff in a job description, because there's almost always fluff. And so we do, and I would say the most successful engagements, we coordinate everything directly with the hiring manager, but that's not always the case. Once the companies get larger, usually the team leads always just have us go through HR, and I don't know if that's their preference or just company policy, but we do interact with hiring managers. I just wish it was more frequent.
Yeah, that's cool. So we have, I have 4 things that I'd like to talk about with blue teamers, managers, recruiters, and people in particular. So, so let's say I'm a blue teamer at a company, and I find out that we need more people, or that we're looking for people. How important is it for I don't know how to call them any other than the rank and file, or like the people who are in the trenches, to look at the job descriptions and maybe the job description that they used when they got hired needs to change, because you may not get the people that you need. Because my job is vulnerability management and pen tester, but we needed a pen tester, not a guy who has pen tester tacked onto the end of his name. So the job description for me was different than the one that I used when I told my boss to hire a pen tester. Do the people in the trenches need to look at those job descriptions from time to time to make sure that they're still useful for the industry and for their company?
Absolutely. I mean, who better to look at the job description than the person performing the job? Yeah, managers or human resources or whoever's detached from the daily duties of the job aren't going to be as connected with those requirements. And so I couldn't agree more. And I would actually say that's not as common as it should be. I don't really hear of that happening too frequently. But yeah, I think it's when we get detached or their layers removed from that specific job, everything starts to get convoluted.
How often do you think that this should happen? I mean, in InfoSec, it tends to move faster than some industries. You don't just hire for information security, right? You do like project management and those things?
Yeah, so we only do those types of roles if it falls back to security. So a security PM, or if it's within a security company or a security team, we'll do it. Like we've done security sales roles or security technical writers.
Right.
So yeah, but if it's outside of security, we don't touch it.
Okay. So what I was saying, what I was trying to get to was that some industries don't move or innovate as often, so there's not really a need to change job description as quickly in a job where the job is fairly static. Like, I don't want to say project management is a static. I don't want to say project management is a static industry or position type, but there are certain milestones and markers that a PM should know and have. It's just the ancillary stuff, like, do you know anything about securing networks or something? But manage resources, manage money, manage time, must have experience in project management. That stuff doesn't change. Whereas information security, pen testing in particular, or log analysis, 5 years ago Splunk probably wasn't the thing a log analysis person needs to know. Now it's like the thing if that company uses it. Amanda's got her eyebrows. She's like, yeah, you got to know the Splunks. So I mean, information security, the job descriptions change much more quickly, I would imagine.
Yeah, that's definitely correct. And it's funny when you said that, as far as more stagnant industries, yeah, program management, project managers is kind of what came to mind.
Yeah.
Sorry to anybody who's a PM out there that's listening. It's a great industry and we need you, but information security just moves so quickly, and that's absolutely correct. As far as a frequency, I would say it's going to vary by the company and vary by the position. But if you are constantly hiring or your team is growing, I would definitely say every few months. It depends also how quickly they hire.
Yeah.
But especially if these positions are open for months at a time, 3 months, 6 months, that should be one of the first things you're looking at if you're not getting hits. If a job description isn't making sense to people, there's a good chance that they aren't getting a good signal from management and aren't going to want to work on that team.
Right. Right. One of the other things about the job description is how often are companies, it's a give and take, right? So every company wants everything that's on that sheet, but how often and how long does it actually take for a company to go, well, maybe we don't need them to have experience with X, or maybe we can
10 years of experience.
Yeah. 10 years of experience with, Swift, programming language, which has only been around for 3 years, or, maybe the requirement for a CISP is not required, but they need to get one within 60 days if they don't have it. How often does a job lay stagnant before they do that?
Yeah, good question. I would actually say they probably adjust it more frequently than one might think. I think that the issue sometimes lies in the fact that they adjust the requirements mentally, or they'll share that with the team, but they don't update it in the job description. And I think that it can be pretty apparent that there is some issue within a job description within a couple months or a few months, especially as they start getting people applying and they say, man, these people are completely off the mark. This is not what we're looking for at all.
Yeah.
Then it's just, what are you communicating out through the job description? And that, I would say, can often happen within a month or two. Maybe it takes longer depending on how slow the team moves. But again, then it comes back to actually going and changing what you're putting out there on job boards or through recruiters and what have you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So one of the other things that bother me, and I love, so Dan Leiter works for Tech Systems up here in Seattle, does a lot of work, just like Preston. It's a dog-eat-dog thing. I'm sure you guys have turf wars or something like Anchorman or whatever. I'm imagining Anchorman like turf wars.
That'd be great.
I wish it were that exciting.
It's not. It's like, hey Dan. Hey, man.
Also not as violent, so that's probably good too.
Oh, right. So
no bloodshed.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's a lot of jobs out there that require the use of it's contract to hire. Now, many of people that I know, contract to hire is kind of, it's a shaky bridge, and a lot of people are looking for full-time employment. Is the job market still requiring contract to hire, and why do companies do that?
There are companies that are still requiring that, absolutely. But from our perspective, and I don't know that this is representative of the industry, I think we're seeing it actually less. And I think that those that have been contract to hire or who have been doing that are simply moving more towards staff augmentation contracts. But the contract to hire, I feel like it's been pushed one way or the other for the most part, where it's either going to be contract work, oftentimes staff augmentation, or it's going to be a full-time hire. But it really is a tricky, I guess, it is a shaky bridge. That's a great way of describing it. And as far as, from the recruiter's perspective, oftentimes we just have to work with what a company is going to do. But really, it's hard not to imagine where somebody's coming from saying, man, like, I get 3 months on this contract, and then what? Am I going to leave my full-time job for this contract to hire role?
Exactly.
How likely is that going to be?
Exactly.
And from an employer's perspective, I don't think it's advantageous. I think the mentality is, hey, it's kind of try before you buy, and we can maybe see, we can have some other company absorb these costs, or they have to pay their own benefits and taxes for a while or whatever. But really, in the end, you're going to limit your talent pool again. And I just also think it's a bad foot to start a relationship on. You're starting it on a relationship that's not built on trust, and that's never a good way to go.
Yeah, because you see the contract to hire with all levels of positions. It's like, oh yeah, here's a senior position, it's contract to hire, and this guy's like, well, I've been working here for 3 years. Why do I want to go to a 3 or 6 month contract where they may or may not pick me up? I have no insurance, no benefits, no time off, no nothing basically. I'm a blue badge like at Microsoft, or an orange badge, I think. the culture up there is a little caustic from what I understand. Between there's a have and have not kind of caste system there with the recruiters and the or not the recruiters, but the contractors and the FTEs. That can be something else you gotta worry about when you're hiring for companies like that. Would a contract to hire position be better for more of a junior role than it would be for a senior role?
Yeah, I could see why it might be more appropriate. I think if you do your research enough, in most cases you can avoid contract to hire. Yeah. That's my personal philosophy.
That's cool.
If you know what you're doing and you know the market well and you're thoroughly vetting people and giving them a good scope into what the work is and viewing their work, I think you can avoid it in most situations. But yeah, if it's a question of would it be more appropriate for a senior versus a junior position, I absolutely think so, because on a senior position, there should be a lot behind them in their work history and I guess what you could kind of deem a portfolio, if you will,
sure,
of work that somebody's done, and that should be able to speak for themselves. I don't think that you should think it's so risky on bringing somebody on who's been in the industry doing successful work for 10 years. It's just kind of stupid. And honestly, in some regards, I think it could probably be seen as insulting sometimes. But for a junior, maybe it's a good way to get your foot in the door at a bigger company or a company you've been wanting to work for. And I don't think that's
experience.
Yeah, and getting experience. It could be a great thing.
Yeah, and I see that in InfoSec. We don't have a lot of like junior positions. Everybody on Twitter keeps talking about the junior pen tester, which is like the holy grail of like you want to get into pen testing, but you're not a senior pen tester. Everybody wants,
but you have no idea what you're doing.
Yeah, well, okay, so let's say a company wants a junior pen tester. What kind of skills would a junior pen tester need to be able to be hired as a junior pen tester? I mean, obviously. Where would somebody who was a junior pen tester come from? And I'm asking both of you because Miss Amanda's going to be hiring people for her defense team at the company she works for now. So we'll go with Preston and we'll go with Amanda.
Yeah, well, this is such an interesting question because, as you both know, the junior pen tester it's pretty elusive in security. It's honestly the number of junior pen testers that I know. It's extremely few, if any, because by the time I know them as a junior pen tester, they're probably a senior now. And so it is tricky. I think largely it comes down to an issue of companies wanting somebody who's already pre-trained and super skilled already and not really willing to bring people on to train them up. And there are certainly teams and companies who do that, but not typically the ones that I think work with recruiters like us.
Right.
But I would say they've got to be able to work with kind of lower levels of expertise within testing. Don't try and require somebody to be doing code reviews if they're a junior. That's maybe if they happen to come from like a software development background, that could be appropriate. But for a lot of people, it's just too much to ask and it's not going to happen.
Right.
So it does come back, I think, to having lower and more realistic expectations and kind of the lower level testing that people can maybe help on a project with, and not to expect to hand somebody some huge testing project from the get-go.
Cool. Amanda, how about you?
I think a junior pen tester would just need a lot of hand-holding. Maybe somebody that's straight out of college that's going to be shadowing a lot. But I know a lot of companies want to build someone green like that to their own methodologies and make it so they don't pick up bad habits in like a big box place, or maybe they want to groom that person to how they want pen testers to be. Cool. So they might not have to know anything at all. Like if I ever wanted to switch to offense, I think I would have to start in a junior pen tester role just because I think I suck at offense. But then if you see some other people that consider themselves senior pen testers and don't actually do pen testing, then it really depends on the company and what the skill set are.
Right. Cool. All right. So I want to shift gears here, and I want to go to somebody that Preston would be recruiting for. Let's say that there's a position out there, and I don't have a degree, I don't have any certs, but the job, I know I can do it because of my off time. I'm, getting involved with CTFs, and I go to DEF CON, and I've, networked with several of those people, and I have a home lab, and I can, reverse engineer shell code. But the job that I'm looking at requires a bachelor's in CS or EE or IT and or OSCP or, all these qualifications that I don't have. How do I write my resume so that, one, you'll give me the time of day, and two, HR won't go, well, he's not qualified?
Yeah, great question again. I do think a lot of that will come back to your resume, but and I'll come back and speak to that. But one of the things that I'd say too is to try and be proactive and do the business thing and go and try and make connections with that HR team or with the security team or even the hiring manager or the team lead, whatever, and try and send some of that forward. Say, hey, just go check out my Twitter. It's blowing up all the time. I'm super active. Or go look at, maybe if you're in application security or something, maybe you've got an active GitHub and you're doing something cool on there, whatever. I think those things to anybody who's really in the industry speak a lot louder and a lot more profoundly than something like certain degrees from a university. And so I think, for one, go be proactive, do the networking thing, and try and, before HR can shut you down for not having some silly qualification, go make your case, make them think about it more deeply and reconsider it. And as far as a resume goes, resume building takes way too long and nobody likes doing it, but it is really crucial. I would say just try and speak to the projects that you've worked on, especially if it's specific to the position you're applying to. Talking about projects and accomplishments and just different things that you've done that really speak to your abilities, I think that can go a long way. But if you can get somebody on your side that can kind of help be your advocate to say, hey, this is really ridiculous, they don't actually need a CISSP because it has nothing to do with this position, that's obviously really helpful too.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking with the Blueteamers. If, the job doesn't necessarily require that, then, I understand why they might have that. If you're working on like a government government contracts, government agencies often require, the 8520 certification or CISSP to, say that they're good to go with regards to security stuff. If you're an auditor, CISA might be something you'd be required to get for PCI or for HIPAA, auditing or whatever. But yeah, I see a lot of these, and I did this, I did this, a couple years ago even. I was looking at jobs, and I'm looking at these job descriptions, and I'm like, oh, I'm not qualified for that job. So should I go ahead and apply anyway, even though I may not have all the qualifications in place, because companies may be willing to barter on those things? Totally
apply every time. First and foremost, if you think about it, applying to a job doesn't take too much, especially if it's like kind of one of those quick applies. Right. Not all of them are super fast, but depending on where it goes through, sometimes you can even just apply with your LinkedIn profile, which may or may not be advantageous, but it is fast.
Right.
But yeah, what I would say is that almost any job description is going to come with certain leeway. I've never encountered a situation where they're absolutely set on every requirement on the job description. And it seems silly, because then, like, why say that it's required if it's not required? But that's just how it is.
Yeah. No, I can understand. Keep this in mind, Miss Amanda, when you're you're the hiring manager. So
yeah, right.
All right. So I think the only thing I've got left that I want to talk about is the So when I did a carve of my LinkedIn recently, because I'm taking my resume to Derbycon, because they're doing resume review there. Miss Amanda is actually one of the reviewers. I'm hoping, I don't mean this in a negative manner, but I hope I don't get you for the review. I know you. I can have you do it anytime. See,
what?
So
well, then. Why haven't we done it already?
I know. I'm sorry. I'll give it to you. But it was like 9 pages. And somebody said, hey, you probably shouldn't have a 9-page resume. And I'm like, well, I've got a bunch of stuff on there. I'm 15 plus years into my career. I started in 1997 when there was nothing.
I don't think being old is an excuse to have a long resume.
That sounds like discrimination, ma'am. Are you discriminating against me?
Ageism.
Yeah. No, I'm just kidding.
It's a thing.
So, what can people do when they have this 8-page resume to pare down, and what can they do to make it more concise and make it better? Because obviously you don't want to look at an 8-page resume, and you don't want to give an HR department an 8-page resume because they won't read it.
Man, I don't think you want to make an 8-page resume either. I think we could start there, but at least I would hope.
It's an overachiever.
No, I think in many instances you can kind of make a decision to cut off your experience at a certain point.
Really?
If it's not relevant to a job, if you've got experience for 15 years and the first 5 years of your experience isn't super relevant, maybe it's somewhat relevant, you can sum it up in just a little paragraph at the end saying prior experience to this was a network engineer doing this, and maybe somebody's going to like seeing that. There are certain instances where that's great to see that they come from a certain background, but you only need to know so much.
Right.
When it comes to resumes, obviously always having the most relevant information to that position is key, while still being yourself, obviously, not, keeping it authentic. That's key, but yeah, just trying to be as concise as possible, getting rid of any of the fluff. And really, I think having other people review it is one of the best ways to do it.
Right.
So I think that's great that they're having that resume workshop. But yeah, I think sending it to however many people are willing to look at it, awesome idea.
Yeah. You want to fly to Derbycon, Louisville? You can.
You paying? I'll be there.
I don't think they pay, but you being there as a recruiter, there's a lot of talented folks there that tend to know things.
No, maybe if I had planned it better, but at this point, probably not.
That's okay. We've got B-Side Seattle and HushCon coming up in the next few months up here in the Seattle area. So, there's always options there. So,
right.
Miss Amanda.
I was just looking at mine. My resume is two full pages.
Oh, that's 2 full pages.
It's a good length. I like that.
I think it's probably because of the way that LinkedIn exports the profile out. Somebody told me that you should make a shorter paper resume, and then if they have more information or they want to know more, refer them to your LinkedIn.
Yep.
Which may be the option. I don't know.
Or just give them one piece of paper just with your LinkedIn URL.
There you go, and a smiley face.
Check me out.
Yeah.
Or maybe you tape a $50 bill to the paper and hand it.
Yes.
Yeah. So, Ms. Amanda, do you have any other questions for Mr. Pierce?
I did. So you talked a lot about working with companies. Do you ever have just regular individuals reach out to you, and at what point should they?
Oh, all the time. And I'll actually have people pretty frequently ask how much it would cost for us to represent them and to work with them. And I always just work with them for free. That's not really how our business operates. And really, I prefer to give back where we can anyway. But people reach out to my team and to me all the time. I think it's appropriate to do that at any number of stages. It was either yesterday or the day before. I had a young man get in touch with me from Los Angeles who's looking to get into penetration testing, asking me all sorts of questions about, should I go towards the OSCP exam to start? Is that going to guarantee me a job? And all sorts of questions, to where I was happy to give him guidance. And that was a great point, I thought, to be asking somebody like me and probably ideally penetration testers in his case, for some good advice. But I think especially if you've been out of work for a while, recruiters are a great resource. They might have some insight into why that could be, or just other people to get in touch with. Recruiters have a pretty extensive network. But yeah, I absolutely have people get in touch with me all the time. And I'm almost always, unless I'm just happen to be busy in that moment, I'm always happy to take the time to look at somebody's resume or their LinkedIn or what have you, and to give some pointers. I don't think it ever hurts to reach out to someone.
Very nice. Very nice. So you mentioned people who are out, have been out for a while. How do you sell that person to a company if they've been out for, say, a year? Because, maybe it's not even job related. Maybe they had some personal medical issues or something. But from what I have heard, employers don't like gaps. So if there's like a 2-year gap or, because, hey, I was recuperating in the hospital from, a major accident. How do you reconcile that? How do you sell that person to a company?
Yeah, that's probably one of the harder things to do, unfortunately. You're right that employers are very hesitant to take people who have gaps in employment. And I think some I would say don't mind it as much if it's maternity leave, which is cool. But yeah, most of the time people are pretty hesitant. They think that if you've been out for a year, you don't know anything about security anymore, and oftentimes won't want to look at you. But yeah, I honestly don't have a silver bullet for how to sell that. Other than that, if somebody is really competent, if they have a lot to show for their work, just putting that forward and saying, hey, take 3 minutes and get a good impression of this, see if this person's work is good, and then come back to me and tell me what you think. I think a lot of it just comes back to kind of really taking on that sales side and being willing to push a little bit on HR or whoever you're speaking with, whether it's the recruiter or if you're an individual who's been out for a time, and just saying, hey, test me. I've got the knowledge to back it. If you press me, I've got this. Like I can handle anything you're going to give me. And I think most people are going to take you up on that. It might take a little bit of courage, and it sometimes is uncomfortable, and most of us don't love sales.
Yeah.
But it is something that you need to do because employers are difficult in that regard.
Cool. All right.
So what I'm hearing is if you have a year or two gap in your resume, to just blame it on maternity leave, because they're not going to ask any questions.
But what do I do?
No, it's paternity leave at that point.
Oh, right.
There you go.
I'm not gonna ask.
I was Mr. Mom for a while. But I mean,
yeah.
Depending on the job and the industry, you can do things on the side.
Right.
Oh yeah. Like I mean, I've done more projects on the side than I have done like an actual job in the last couple of years.
Okay. So that's another good question. You got all this experience on the side. Where do you put it in your resume? Because I've been putting it as my current job. Like, I do this stuff, but I also have this. The podcast I put separately now because it's kind of a thing. But, if you're doing CTFs at DEF CON or Black Hat or Derby, and you've done fairly decently in those, and that's not part of your job. Maybe you're doing project management, but you just, like the guy we had on, Robert Sell. He's like a manager, but he went and did the social engineering CTF at DEF CON and got
I think that's an accomplishment that you can put on your resume. So like I have 2 sections at the bottom. One's for certifications, trainings, and publications, and the second is for conferences, affiliations, and presentations.
Okay.
So, I mean, I think anything big like that should definitely go on there.
Yeah.
It's a good selling point.
Yeah, but I mean, how does that translate to HR though? I mean, I don't know. It just seems to me that those things, for a hiring manager or somebody who's in the know, who's technical, blue team in the trenches, would be like,
pretty cool.
Holy cow, we need that
care.
guy,
Yeah.
And HR would pass on those people.
Right.
So I think that's another part of the issue with the industry is that the people who are actually doing the hiring don't necessarily know what is needed for the job. So that's why I guess we have people like Preston getting around the HR block and stuff. So
doing my best.
Yeah, right on. All right. Well, I don't have any other questions for Mr. Pierce. Amanda, how about you? You got anything?
No.
You want to have him help you?
Can I just send you the whole list of people that I have?
Yeah, I was like,
that are looking for jobs.
Yeah.
Send it over. Seriously.
Nice. Yeah. So you hire for in the U.S. Do you ever hire overseas too? Because we do have some international folks as well. Do you have any companies that are looking for overseas folks?
Not really. I have had a couple of requests that haven't really transpired too much. But I am connected with people internationally. So depending on where they're at, the thing for me is I'm certainly not about only putting somebody forward in any way if it's going to benefit us. That's kind of just stupid. And so if I happen to know anybody, even other recruiters who I think it might work out to send somebody their way, I absolutely do. And so yeah, I mean, if you've got international people, send them over and we'll see what we can do.
Cool. All right. Well, Mr. Pierce, if people are looking for a job or they just like to talk about recruiting, maybe they want to become a recruiter, are you guys hiring for recruiters? I mean, how does recruiting for a recruiter work?
Yeah, that's a great question. Oftentimes it is word of mouth. Oftentimes it is recruiting recruiters. But yeah, we are hiring and we have been hiring recently. But I think word of mouth is a lovely thing to have to not recruit somebody. So if somebody is listening to this and they're a recruiter or aspiring, get in touch with us. But yeah, oftentimes it will come down to finding somebody who, I think for recruiting more than anything has the desire. Recruiting isn't that technical. I mean, I'm not going to pretend that it's some wizardry. It really, I mean, there is learning like anything. But more than anything, it's being willing to sit down and do the research and to actually learn and be dedicated, and to have enough interest in an industry like security to go and say, hey, this stuff is amazing. This stuff's really cool. So really, it's just trying to find somebody who shows that level of determination and interest, and then usually it's a good fit.
Yeah, got to build rapport with people. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Cool. So how would people do that? How would people contact you if they wanted to do that?
LinkedIn's a great way. You can look me up, Preston Pierce. Otherwise, just shoot me an email, preston@3pnt.com. And the and sign is spelled out because we don't do ampersands in emails. So, but yeah, feel free to shoot me an email, get in touch through LinkedIn. I'll always be responsive. I'm always on them.
Okay. Are you on Twitter or anything like that?
The business is, I haven't been on Twitter in a little while. I get a little too distracted. It kind of makes my productivity drop a little bit. So if we're being honest,
I have no idea what you're talking about.
No, I don't know what you mean.
I have no idea. No idea.
Yeah, it's a personal decision. I miss it sometimes, but I'm like, I need to back off.
Yeah. So
I've done that.
Me too.
I only last like 2 to 4 days.
Yeah. Plus the whole Equifax thing. We're recording this on the 14th, but the whole Equifax thing came up again today, and there's a lot of drama. So yeah.
Oh yeah.
Miss Amanda, if people wanted to contact you, maybe for a job at your new company, or to discuss resume review, which apparently you do. So
you do.
How would they go about getting a hold of you?
Well, you can come find me at Derbycon.
Yes, we're having a good time there.
You should be listening to this podcast during, I'm guessing.
Exactly.
Right. Or on Twitter at InfoSyster, INFOSYSTIR, or on our Slack channel.
Yep. Excellent. Mr. Betcher, he's the lead developer and co-founder of LogMD. If you're interested in finding out about Windows logging, he doesn't actually sponsor the show, but we're gonna fix that. He's gonna up his Patreon level, I think.
I want a T-shirt or something.
I sent him a T-shirt. He just
I know you did. I want one.
Oh, okay.
Well, I don't want a T-shirt anymore. I have way too many T-shirts.
Yeah.
I want them to start making like socks or tank tops.
Leisure wear. Could be like some
pajamas,
nice comfy flannel jammies.
Like I wear pajamas every day for work. I want some pajamas.
Okay, I'm actually wearing what I wore to work today. So you can find Mr. Betcher on Twitter at BetcherPwned, BOETTCHERPWNED, or LogMD. Malwarearchaeology.com is also another good site where you can find out information with him and Mr. Goff's company. The official BreakSec podcast is at BreakSec on Twitter, BRAKESEC, and you can follow me, Brian Brake, on Twitter at Brian Brake, BRYANBRAKE. We have a Slack channel. You can sign up on our Slack channel by going to breaksec.signup.team. We have a job board on there. We're not trying to take anything away from Preston, of course, but we do have people of our almost 700. Almost 700. Holy crap. Right. 696 people.
I told 3 new people about it yesterday.
Shut up. Wow. Very nice. Thank you, ma'am. We have a job board, so if people have jobs, and these are the hiring managers and the rank and file blue teamers in the trenches that can help you get past the evil HR people. I think we've moved the goalpost for evil away from some of the recruiters to HR now. So now we need to have an HR show. So
I don't know. Some recruiters still piss me off.
Well, they will continue to do so. But yeah, if you're interested in trying to find a job, there are several positions on there. breaksec.signup.team. We also have other channels. We have a general channel. We will have a dedicated Derbycon channel with about 20 people in it right now. If you are at Derbycon right now, join us on Slack and come into hashtag Derbycon, and we'll be in there, and you can talk to us without having to, install some kind of encrypted comms application or something. We also have a PowerShell. We have a Python channel. My meetup CSEC East, we have a dedicated channel for that. We have all kinds of stuff. So, we've got a bunch of people on there, a lot of interesting people. Book club is still going on. That meets on the 27th, but we've got somebody running that, so it's a good time. So, that was it. Thank you to all of our patrons who give us money, put a little money in our tip jar every month for the show. They find value for that, so they give us a little value back, and we appreciate that. That pays for Libsyn hosting and the time to process the show, and all the time that I'm wasting on Twitter and Slack, apparently. So, we appreciate them. So you can find us on iTunes, Google Play Store, TuneIn Radio app, iHeartRadio. We're pretty much everywhere. In the show notes, you can find all the other places where we are, YouTube channel. So that was it. Next week, the next podcast you hear will probably be some Derbycon audio or our podcaster with podcasts, podcaster podcast. That'll be a good time. That's our 3rd annual, I think. So we're looking forward to that. It gets better every year. So that was it for
that.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay. I look forward to seeing Miss Amanda next week, or right now.
Now.
We're probably having nachos or something at next year. Anyway, so that was it for Breaking Down Security. I'm out. Okay. Have a great week. Be nice to one another, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Bye.